Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks, where we meet with the top thought leaders and strategists in emerging technologies, digital assets, and regulatory landscape and capital markets. I'm your host, Jill Malandrino, and joining me this afternoon, we have Brian Stutland, Managing Partner at Equity Armor Investments, as well as Joe Tigay, Managing Partner and Portfolio Manager, also at Equity Armor Investments. We're here to discuss navigating market shifts and semiconductor exposure to AI. It's great to have the both of you. Welcome back, as always. And Brian, let's kick it off here. It feels as if the market is somewhat of a wait-and-see mode until we get some clarity post-election, whatever that might be.
Yeah, it really is. Now it's coming down to a couple weeks before we really have a big volatility event. I mean, you're looking at A, the election, obviously, like you mentioned, but B, in that same week, we have a Fed meeting decision on interest rate policy, and we get more information about the unemployment report and numbers there and where that's going to take us. So all three of those expected to be a pretty big volatility event. We do have earnings starting to fire off, right? We've gotten some news out of the banks and how they're doing. The likes like JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs doing pretty well. But now the rest of the tech sector news will be coming up. So really, I think after this expiring cycle here in October comes off the board, the next couple of weeks are going to be some exciting moments for the market.
Yeah. And Joe, when you think about it, it seems as if the tide is impacting all asset classes, right? You have equities that are sitting near all-time highs. Gold is up. US debt is also up. And it seems as if they're both on a never-ending path moving higher.
Yeah, well, the more money to be spent, the more likely it is to see gold also higher. But that inflation play also bleeds over into the equity prices. This is not a new phenomenon, but it's interesting to see the debt just continue to spiral higher and higher and higher. There's no sign of it ending anytime soon. And maybe that is a problem for the future, but for the immediate future, like the next year, it just seems like money is being sent. These asset prices are benefiting from it.
Right. And Joe, when you think about it, if we isolate it to the Nasdaq 100 and, looking at those Mag 7 names, Amazon, Apple, Meta, Alphabet, Microsoft, right, all happening over the next few weeks, what could potentially be the catalyst to the upside here?
Yeah, well, it's really interesting to see this AI phase just continue to go on. ASML was a big, just shock to the market. People were really worried. Great news from Taiwan Semi, kind of saying, hey, this AI trade is still going on. But now we're going to go to the next story. So we're going to get to the actual Mag 7. They're not so much, besides NVIDIA, they're not so much like the producers. They're really going to be the implementers of the AI. So I'm really interested to see what they have to say for Amazon, for Microsoft. They're going to be talking about their cloud. They're going to be inviting other companies to come onto the cloud, use the AI on their cloud. They're going to be benefiting that way. For Google, for Meta, they're going to be talking about their advertising, using the AI to target advertising in a more innovative way. So I'm really interested to see if there's any new developments for this AI phase. We've gotten the hardware down. I'm looking forward to the software play. I'm looking forward to the next revolution, the next evolution of the AI.
Yeah. And Brian, let's turn to the volatility markets for a moment here. Of course, it's regular way expiration this October 18th. And you see that the VIX is down a bit. Is this a function of October expiration? Is it giving any clues into the election, perhaps what Fed policy or fiscal policy is hinting?
It is interesting that we're seeing the VIX come off today and down about 4 or 5%, trading lower here. And especially, like I talked about, heading into a handful of events that should be market movers. But remember, the VIX is calculated. You talked about the expiration right now. VIX is calculated off of 30-day options. And those options now 30 days out are beyond the election time frame here. So maybe there's some sort of, discount there to be what will happen after the election, that will things settle down, and maybe traders, option traders that is, are more focused on the volatility that's going to occur over the next 2 or 3 weeks rather than a month or 2 months from now. But certainly still, the VIX elevated in the high teens right now. It is on the higher end of the trading range here that we've seen maybe over the last, call it, year and a half. So certainly there's still some expectations, some worriness about where this markets can go. And I think there's still money sitting on the sideline waiting for the election to happen, waiting for this volatility event to happen, and then might jump in after that point.
Yeah, Brian, I'm actually curious to see how the volatility composure shifts, let's call it the day after the election, right? If history serves as a guide in the transfer of power from the past 4 years, and that, of course, it took a little bit of time to figure out what that looked like, maybe volatility could be here a little bit longer than just post the election.
Well, certainly, because what's going to overhang past that, although typically that November, December time after the election has been historically pretty good for the stock market. But in this situation, now we have to worry about where is the unemployment report? Where's the unemployment rate going? where's inflation going? And those two components, as people actually turn to the concrete macro environment, will start to create some concern as to whether this move higher in the stock market is really sustainable or not. And that's where I expect volatility to be elevated. I mean, we spoke about gold earlier on in the show, and historically, you look at gold prices as they start to rocket higher, that's led to increased volatility in the stock market. So if that's not an early indicator of what might be to come, then I don't know what else is.
Yeah, Joe, let's turn back to the AI theme for a moment here. When you take a look at chip stocks, right, and how they stand to benefit from AI, are you looking at this sector in general? Are there particular names that stand out?
Yeah, I follow all of them very closely. It's really fun to see like their run up this year. ASML big disappointment. ASML big disappointment to start the week. Great news from Taiwan Semi on the follow up. So I'm expecting more of the same. I don't think the story has ended. People are still building out that infrastructure to gather their data centers, to just have that computing power to implement all of this AI. So yes, this is a story I'm continuing to watch. I'm also continuing watching the rest of the chip names. I want to see some recovery from Intel. There's been some talk about them lately. They'll be reporting later on, but I'm not expecting this quarter to be fantastic, but I want to hear them starting to get on a level ground with the NVIDIAs of the world. I want to hear about how they're going to push off their foundry into a subsidiary. I want to hear about their cutting costs, and I want to hear about their new chips. They've got chips that are going to be able to compete with NVIDIA coming soon. How soon will that be? I really want to see that story play out faster.
Yeah. Brian, any thoughts around the semi space here? It doesn't feel as if it's a short-term story. This is something, I mean, this is how our digital economy is being powered.
It certainly is. And when you take a look at it, yeah, ASML had some disappointing earnings, but I think that's more of a function of just supply and how strong of demand there are for chips as they basically supply the machines that make the chips. But when you look at the rest of the sector, SMH, I just wanted to highlight a chart here on that. Obviously that whole sector in general, beginning in August, had a massive sell-off. It started to recover. It retested those lows successfully and bounced off of that. And now we're seeing a nice channel on the technical basis to the upside. So if this sort of upward channel can continue in SMH, I probably would be a buyer in the sector because, to Joe's point, I think a lot of these other names, can they play catch up? I think the answer is yes. Now, obviously, NVIDIA has been the leader in the world in it as it hits new fresh highs. But the rest of the chip sector, I think, is there. And I think the global economy is just moving to this digital AI, generative AI, expansive world. And that plays really well for the semiconductor sector.
Yeah. And Brian, let's go back to the options market for a moment here, right? IBM, quiet old name, 41% up this year, reporting next week.
Yeah, it really is. It's almost like the value play in technology, but really, I don't know that it really is. I mean, it falls in large cap value, usually sectors of the market, as we look to analyze portfolios on how to hold it and where it sits. But in reality, between Watson and its AI powering and consulting firm basis on IBM, it really has been part of this AI, generative AI play. And so the options market's kind of interesting because next week, earnings for IBM, the options market looking for just under a 5% move and huge open interest down below where IBM is trading right now at the 225 strike. So that'll be a strike price that will be interesting to watch if IBM were to trade lower and make a 5% move to the downside. I'm not so sure that happens, but should that be, that's something that, traders are looking at.
Yeah. So Joe, to wrap up here, any technical levels to watch in IBM?
No, I don't have any technical levels. It is interesting. It is interesting to see them play through earnings. I'll be following it closely. And is Watson something that people are still looking at, still utilizing? I know they've come a long ways, but yeah, it is fun to see them.
Yeah, it certainly is. And keeping that 5% move in mind, as it relates to levels to watch. All right, appreciate the insight. As always, guys, thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.